The marble halls of Chicago's prestigious Whitmore Museum gleamed under crystal chandeliers as Dr. Marcus Bennett straightened his daughter's collar. 10-year-old Sage's eyes sparkled with wonder, reflecting the towering columns that framed priceless masterpieces along the walls. "What's our family rule about knowledge?" Marcus asked, smoothing his tailored jacket. "Curiosity opens every door," Sage replied confidently, clutching her sketchbook, a gift from her father filled with drawings of famous artists she admired. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Just one quick call about the Philadelphia exhibit, sweetheart. This partnership could bring Renaissance art to museums across the country." Sage nodded. At 10 years old, she already understood more about her father's work than most adults. She'd spent countless evenings listening to him explain how he built Bennett Arts Consulting from nothing, turning his passion for preserving culture into a thriving company. 5 minutes, he promised, stepping aside. Through the grand windows, Sage watched visitors flowing through the entrance, heading toward the special exhibition Marcus's company had helped curate. Her heart raced with anticipation. She loved museums, especially the VIP gallery section where her father's client privileges granted them access. "The view is always better where inspiration lives," he would say with a wink. Marcus finished his call and returned, kneeling to kiss her forehead. "Stay curious, sweetheart. Your imagination belongs in any gallery." The museum director's voice echoed through the speakers. "Now welcoming our patron circle members to the exclusive Renaissance collection." "That's you," Marcus smiled, handing Sage her admission badge. "Go ahead and explore. I'll be right behind you after I check something with the curator." Sage walked confidently through the velvet-roped entrance, her small messenger bag bouncing at her hip. The familiar scent of aged canvas and climate control greeted her as she entered the gallery. A museum attendant stood at the entrance. Brittany Walsh, according to her name tag, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, her makeup flawless. Sage offered her brightest smile. "Good afternoon." Brittany's returning smile flickered and died as she watched Sage turn toward the VIP gallery instead of the general exhibition. Her green eyes narrowed. Sage found her spot easily, a cushioned bench directly facing a newly restored Botticelli. She set down her bag and pulled out her sketchbook, settling in to study the masterpiece just as her father had taught her. "Excuse me." Brittany's voice cut through Sage's concentration. The attendant loomed over her, lips pressed into a thin line. "I think you must be lost." Sage looked up, maintaining her polite smile despite the knot forming in her stomach. "No, ma'am. I'm in the patron circle section. My badge is right here." "Little girl, this gallery is for major donors and their guests. You must have wandered past the rope. Let me help you find the public viewing area." "But I have a patron badge," Sage explained, her voice small but steady. "My father will be here in a minute." "He's just—" Brittany's laugh cut through the gallery like shattering porcelain. Several visitors turned to stare. "Oh, sweetie, this isn't a playground. These memberships cost tens of thousands of dollars." Sage's cheeks burned. She'd never felt so small, so unwelcome. She reached for her badge, but Brittany was already moving, her manicured hand closing around Sage's shoulder. "Come on now," Brittany said, pulling Sage to her feet. "Let's get you back where you belong." The grip was tight. Too tight. Sage stumbled as Brittany guided her forcefully toward the exit. Her beloved sketchbook slipped from her lap, pages splaying across the polished floor. Other patrons watched in uncomfortable silence, some averting their eyes, others whispering behind their hands. Tears welled in Sage's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "Your imagination belongs in any gallery." But right now, with every eye watching her humiliation, those words felt impossibly far away. Her lip trembled as Brittany continued pulling her past rows of judging faces. The attendant's fingers dug into her shoulder, and Sage bit back a whimper. She'd never felt so alone, so powerless, so obviously unwanted. The murmurs grew louder. "Shouldn't someone say something?" one patron whispered. "Poor thing must be confused," another replied, but no one moved to help. No one spoke up. They just watched as a 10-year-old girl was forcibly removed from a gallery she had every right to occupy. Sage's small shoes stumbled over her fallen sketchbook, its pages now creased and dirty on the gallery floor. She wanted to pick it up, to clutch it close like a shield, but Brittany's grip was relentless. Sage's feet stumbled beneath her as Brittany continued pulling her toward the exit. The attendant's fingers dug deeper into her shoulder, sending sharp pains down her arm. She tried to plant her feet, but the polished marble offered no traction. "Please," Sage whispered, her voice trembling. "You're hurting me. Don't make this difficult," Brittany hissed through clenched teeth, her practiced smile now a grimace. "We can't have you causing disruption in the patron gallery. I'll find where you actually belong." An elderly gentleman in a tweed jacket touched Brittany's elbow. "My dear, perhaps we should. I have this under control," Brittany cut him off, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Just a confused child who wandered past the barriers. Phones appeared in patrons' hands. Some recording discreetly, others just pretending to examine the artwork while watching the scene unfold. A businessman in an expensive suit smirked, clearly entertained. A young mother pulled her own daughter closer, looking away in discomfort. Sage's chest tightened. The gallery felt smaller, the air thinner. Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she remembered her father's lessons about dignity. She straightened her spine just like he'd taught her. I said stop. Sage's voice rang out stronger now, echoing through the gallery. My dad runs the consulting firm that brought these paintings here. The declaration hung in the air for a moment before Brittany's laughter shattered it, sharp, mocking, cruel. Oh, sweetie, she sneered. That's quite an imagination you have. Other patrons joined in with nervous chuckles. A woman in pearls rolled her eyes. Children these days, she muttered. Too much television. But then a deep voice cut through the noise like thunder. Is there a problem with my daughter's access? The laughter died instantly. Dr. Marcus Bennett stood at the gallery entrance, his tall frame filling the archway. His tailored suit and commanding presence drew every eye. But it was his expression, controlled fury beneath perfect composure, that silenced the room. Brittany's face drained of color. Her grip on Sage's shoulder loosened, then dropped entirely. I was just remove your hands from my daughter. Marcus's words were quiet but carried the weight of steel. Immediately, Sage ran to her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder but kept his gaze fixed on Brittany, who had begun to stammer. Sir, there must be some misunderstanding, she backpedaled, smoothing her uniform with trembling hands. I thought she was lost. I was only trying to help. By physically dragging a 10-year-old child? Marcus's eyebrow arched. Please call Director Hastings to the gallery. And I'll need your supervisor's contact information. That's not necessary, Brittany protested weakly. I was just following protocol. Now, Ms. Walsh. The use of her name made her flinch. She fumbled with her radio, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the plastic as she paged the museum director. Director Hastings appeared moments later, his silver hair disheveled, concern etched on his weathered face as he took in the scene. Marcus, is everything all right? Marcus handed him Sage's patron badge. Please confirm for Ms. Walsh that my daughter's VIP access is valid. The director examined the badge, then nodded. Patron circle, full access. Everything is completely in order. He glanced at Brittany, who had pressed herself against a marble pillar. Her earlier confidence evaporated, phones recorded openly now, capturing every moment of Brittany's humiliation. The patrons who had laughed earlier suddenly found the artwork fascinating. Marcus turned to address the gallery, his voice measured but carrying undertones of barely contained anger. The problem here isn't confusion, Ms. Walsh. It's assumption. You saw my daughter, a young black girl, and decided she couldn't possibly belong in the patron gallery. You didn't check her credentials. You didn't ask for clarification. You chose to publicly humiliate a child rather than consider that she might have every right to be here. Brittany's face flushed red. Sir, I apologize if my actions were misinterpreted. Don't apologize for my interpretation, Marcus cut her off. Apologize for your actions. The silence stretched taut as patrons held their breath. Brittany's lips quivered before she forced out the words, I'm sorry. The apology rang hollow, her eyes darting to the floor rather than meeting Sage's gaze. Marcus nodded curtly and guided his daughter back to their viewing area. He picked up her fallen sketchbook, smoothing its crumpled pages before returning it to her hands. The museum visit resumed, but tension lingered in the air like static before a storm. Patrons whispered behind their hands, some shooting sympathetic glances toward Sage, others simply looking uncomfortable with what they had witnessed or failed to prevent. As they moved through the galleries, Brittany retreated to the staff office. Her fingers pressed the internal communication button, lips curling into a familiar smirk as she whispered to her supervisor, we need to document this incident. He threatened me. In the Botticelli gallery, Sage's eyes grew heavy as she leaned against her father's shoulder. She drifted into thought, unaware that Brittany's smirk had returned, unaware that this confrontation was far from over. 2 days later, Marcus sat in his downtown office overlooking Lake Michigan. The museum visit had felt like a closed chapter until his email pinged. The subject line grabbed his attention immediately, urgent internal review. Allegations of threatening behavior by Dr. Marcus Bennett. Marcus's fingers tightened around his phone as he read, Dear Dr. Bennett, this notice serves to inform you that Whitmore Museum employee Brittany Walsh has filed a formal complaint regarding your conduct during your recent visit. Ms. Walsh reports feeling threatened and intimidated during your interaction, citing aggressive behavior. We take the safety of our staff seriously and are conducting a full review. The words blurred before his eyes. His throat tightened with disbelief and anger. The museum was turning the narrative, twisting his defense of his daughter into something sinister. A notification popped up, a direct message on his professional LinkedIn account. Dr. Bennett, I'm Naomi Chen with the Chicago Herald-Tribune. I've been following the museum discrimination video from your visit. This isn't the first incident of its kind at Whitmore. I'd like to help you control this narrative before it gets buried in institutional damage control. They're already trying to spin it. Let me help you tell the truth. Marcus studied her profile. Award-winning investigative journalist known for exposing discrimination in Chicago's cultural institutions. Her articles had sparked policy changes at several major nonprofits. Her offer was tempting, but Marcus had built his success on careful navigation of institutional politics. He'd learned to pick his battles, to trust in systems and due process. He typed a polite response, "Thank you for your interest, Ms. Chen. I appreciate your offer, but I prefer to handle this through appropriate channels. The museum has assured me they're reviewing the situation." Naomi's reply came quickly, "They'll protect their own before they protect the truth. This isn't about one attendant. It's about a pattern. Don't let them bury this story." Marcus started to compose another reply when his phone buzzed with a text from his assistant, "Sir, our Renaissance contract with Whitmore was just suspended without explanation." He stared at the message, the reality of institutional retaliation sinking in. The office suddenly felt colder. Through his window, he could see the museum's distinctive architecture in the distance, its limestone facade gleaming in the afternoon sun, now a monument to both culture and corruption. In the next room, he heard Sage humming as she worked on her art homework, blissfully unaware that her father's defense of her dignity might cost him everything he'd built. The laptop screen still showed Naomi's warning. Marcus's finger hovered over the delete button, his faith in the system warring with the growing realization that some battles can't be fought through proper channels alone. The morning sun streamed through the hotel suite's windows where Marcus had been staying since the threats escalated. He'd been up since dawn, reviewing documents and preparing for client presentations, trying to maintain normalcy. His laptop chimed with a new email. The sender, Patricia Drummond, Chief of Staff, Whitmore Museum Board. Marcus's jaw tightened as he opened it. "Dr. Bennett, your immediate attendance is required for a video hearing regarding the recent incident. The meeting will commence at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Please find the conference link below. This matter requires urgent resolution. Regards, Patricia Drummond." Marcus checked his watch. 8:45 a.m. The timing felt deliberate, designed to catch him off guard. He glanced at Sage, who sat cross-legged on the suite's sofa, absorbed in a nature documentary. "Maria," he called to his assistant in the adjoining room. "Can you stay with Sage for an hour? I have an unexpected meeting." At his desk, Marcus straightened his tie and clicked the conference link. Patricia Drummond's face filled the screen, elegant, perfectly composed, with eyes that reminded him of a corporate lawyer. Two other figures joined, Brittany Walsh and a man introduced as the museum's legal counsel. "Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bennett," Patricia began, her voice carrying practiced warmth. "We're here to address serious concerns about your conduct during your recent visit." Marcus leaned forward. "My conduct? I think you mean please." Patricia raised a manicured hand. "Let's allow Ms. Walsh to share her experience first." Brittany's face appeared larger on screen. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice trembling. "I was just doing my job, following security protocols," she began, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Dr. Bennett became aggressive, intimidating me in front of patrons. He used his position as a contractor to threaten my employment." Marcus watched in disbelief as tears rolled down Brittany's cheeks. This was the same woman who had roughly grabbed his daughter's shoulder, who had laughed at Sage's distress. "That's a complete misrepresentation," Marcus stated firmly. "I have witness statements from multiple patrons. I have video evidence." "Dr. Bennett," Patricia cut in smoothly. "We understand you're upset, but using your business relationship with Whitmore to intimidate our staff is unacceptable." Ms. Walsh was performing standard verification procedures. "Standard procedures?" Marcus's voice rose slightly before he controlled it. "My daughter had valid patron credentials. Your employee made assumptions based on her race, publicly humiliated her, and physically grabbed her." "That's not true," Brittany burst out, fresh tears flowing. "I would never have black friends. I was just ensuring proper gallery protocols." Marcus opened his laptop files. "I have the access logs here, patron statements confirming my version of events, and social media videos clearly showing Dr. Bennett." Patricia's voice turned sharp. "This hearing isn't about social media drama. We're concerned about protecting our employees from hostile behavior. Several witnesses noted your threatening demeanor." The legal counsel spoke up. "Given your company's contractual relationship with Whitmore, any abuse of that influence is particularly concerning." Marcus felt his pulse quicken but kept his voice steady. Are you suggesting that defending my daughter from discrimination is an abuse of influence? Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. We're suggesting that escalating this situation could have unfortunate consequences for ongoing business relationships. Your name has been flagged in our system for aggressive behavior towards staff. Flagged? Marcus's fingers gripped the desk edge. You're blacklisting me for standing up to racial profiling. That's a serious accusation, Dr. Bennett, Patricia replied icily. One that could be damaging to both parties if made public. I'm sure you understand the importance of maintaining professional relationships and professional discretion. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Marcus could hear Sage's documentary playing in the background, the narrator describing how animals protect their young. We'll be conducting a full review of all contracts with Bennett Arts Consulting, the legal counsel added. Standard procedure when behavioral concerns arise. Marcus looked at their faces, Patricia's calculated calm, Brittany's performative distress, the lawyer's bureaucratic detachment. A well-oiled machine designed to crush opposition under the weight of policy and procedure. I believe we're done here, Marcus said quietly. You'll be hearing from my attorneys. That would be unfortunate, Patricia replied. For everyone involved. Sometimes it's better to let small misunderstandings fade away for the sake of business and family. The mention of family, the veiled threat against Sage's future, made Marcus's hand shake as he reached for the laptop lid. Before closing it, he took one last look at Patricia's smug expression and Brittany's tear-stained face. The laptop clicked shut. Marcus pushed back from the desk, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. The morning sun still streamed through the windows, but its warmth had vanished. On the sofa, Sage laughed at her documentary, the sound both precious and painful. She had no idea that her father's defense of her dignity had unleashed an institutional monster determined to destroy everything he'd built. Evening shadows crept across the hotel suite as Marcus paced, his phone buzzing with urgent messages from business partners. The day's client meetings had been a blur, his mind stuck on Patricia Drummond's thinly veiled threats. A knock at the door made him pause. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her mid-30s, professionally dressed with an air of quiet determination. Naomi Chen, she said when he opened the door. We exchanged messages about the museum incident. Marcus hesitated. Miss Chen, I appreciate your interest, but 5 minutes, she interrupted, holding up a manila folder. That's all I need to show you what you're really up against. Something in her steady gaze made Marcus step aside. Sage looked up from her homework at the dining table, curious about their visitor. Would you like some coffee? Marcus offered, his manners automatic despite his reservations. Black, please. Naomi settled into an armchair, setting her folder on the coffee table. Like the truth, no sugarcoating. While Marcus prepared coffee, Naomi pulled out documents, arranging them with practiced efficiency. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room as Marcus returned with 2 cups. First, Naomi began, sliding forward a stack of papers. Meet Dr. Raymond Torres, museum curator, fired last year for insubordination. His real crime? Filing a discrimination complaint after 3 qualified black applicants he recommended were rejected without interviews. Marcus scanned the document, his coffee cooling forgotten. Then there's Keisha Williams, she continued, presenting another file. Patron membership revoked for disruptive conduct. Her disruption? Questioning why her daughter was stopped by security 3 times in one visit while white children roamed freely. How did you get these? Marcus asked, noting the internal timestamps. I protect my sources, Naomi replied simply. But there's more. Much more. She spread out document after document. Complaints buried, whistleblowers silenced, patterns of discrimination masked as policy enforcement. This isn't just about one attendant's prejudice, Naomi explained, her voice low but intense. It's systematic. Whitmore has a whole playbook for handling discrimination claims. First, they isolate the complainant. Then they reframe the narrative, make the victim look like the aggressor. Finally, they leverage their power contracts, connections, whatever it takes to maintain silence. Marcus set down his cup, the ceramic clicking sharply against the table. I understand what you're showing me, Miss Chin, but going public could damage everything I've built. My investors will abandon you anyway once the museum's smear campaign kicks in, Naomi finished. They're already moving against you, aren't they? Suspended contracts, surprise audits? Marcus's silence was answer enough. You can't win quietly against a system that profits from silence, Naomi pressed. They're counting on your fear of scandal, your desire to protect your business. That's how they've gotten away with this for years. Daddy? Both adults turned. Sage stood beside the table, her math homework clutched in her small hands. Her eyes were wide with worry. Did I do something wrong at the museum? Is that why those people are mad at you? Marcus felt his heart crack. He crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling before his daughter. No, baby. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. But that lady said I wasn't supposed to be there, Sage persisted. And now you're worried all the time. Marcus pulled her close, feeling her small frame against his chest. Over her head, he met Naomi's steady gaze. In that moment, he saw the choice clearly: stay quiet and let his daughter believe she was somehow wrong, or fight back and show her what standing up for truth really meant. Miss Chen, he said, still holding Sage. If we do this, we stick to facts. No embellishment, no manipulation. Just truth. Naomi nodded, respect flickering in her eyes. Always. Truth is the only weapon we need. They spent the next hour outlining a strategy. Sage returned to her homework, occasionally glancing at their intense discussion. Naomi's laptop glowed as she showed Marcus her research methodology, her network of sources, her plans for protecting both his business and his daughter from backlash. We'll need to move fast, she explained, before they can bury more evidence or pressure more witnesses into silence. Marcus agreed, feeling both terrified and relieved to finally take action. As they wrapped up, his phone buzzed with a new email notification. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, "Final warning." Marcus opened it, Naomi watching closely over his shoulder. The message was brief: drop your complaint. We know things about your company you wouldn't want exposed. Consider your daughter's future. His hands clenched around the phone. The threat was clear. They had gone digging, looking for dirt, real or manufactured. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Someone had invested serious resources into destroying him. Well, Naomi said quietly. Looks like we're not the only ones gathering information. She paused, studying Marcus's tense expression. Are you ready for what comes next? Marcus looked at Sage, still focused on her math problems, her face scrunched in concentration. He thought of her question, did I do something wrong, and felt steel enter his spine. Yes, he answered. Whatever it takes to make sure my daughter never doubts her worth again. Morning sunlight streamed through the hotel windows as Marcus scrolled through his phone, his coffee going cold beside him. His inbox was exploding. Dozens of reporters wanted comments on breaking allegations about Bennett Arts Consulting's financial practices. His hands shook as he opened the first link. There, splashed across a major Chicago business news site, were internal documents from his company. Spreadsheets, contracts, bank statements. But something was wrong. The numbers didn't match his records. This isn't right, he muttered, pulling up his laptop to check against his actual files. These have been changed. Sage was still asleep in the adjoining room as he dialed Naomi's number. She answered on the first ring. I've seen it, she said before he could speak. Someone's trying to make it look like you've been embezzling from client acquisition funds. The timestamps on those documents are suspicious. They've been digitally altered. Marcus ran a hand over his face. How did they even get these files? Our servers are secure. About that, Naomi replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. I've been making calls since 5 a.m. One of my sources says Whitmore hired a private security firm last week. They didn't just go after your public records, they breached your system. That's illegal, Marcus said, his voice rising. He glanced toward Sage's room and lowered his tone. We need proof. Already working on it. Can you meet me at the coffee shop 2 blocks from your hotel? There's someone you need to talk to. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in a corner booth across from Naomi and a nervous-looking young Asian man in his late 20s. He wore an ID badge from Whitmore's IT department, partially hidden under his jacket. This is David Kim, Naomi introduced him. He's taking an enormous risk by being here. David nodded, his eyes darting around the coffee shop. They don't know I saved copies, he said quietly. Of everything. What exactly is everything? Marcus asked, leaning forward. David pulled out a USB drive. Proof that Whitmore hired Granite Security to breach your servers. But that's not the worst part. He swallowed hard. I found something else while I was tracking the intrusion. Something called Visitor Watch. Marcus glanced at Naomi, who was already taking notes. What's Visitor Watch? It's a visitor flagging system, David explained, his voice barely above a whisper. Been in place for years. It automatically marks certain patrons for extra scrutiny based on. He paused, looking sick. Demographic factors. You mean race? Naomi said flatly. David nodded. Among other things. Young black visitors, especially in upscale galleries, get flagged most often. But it's not just about security. The system sends alerts to staff about potential compliance issues. He pulled out a printed document. Like this one. Marcus took the paper, his stomach turning as he read. There, in cold institutional language, was a pre-visit alert about his daughter. Visitor watch identified in patron gallery, juvenile female, demographic code C2, accompanied by high-profile guardian, code C2. Monitor for access compliance and behavioral concerns. They marked her before she even arrived, Marcus said, his voice hollow. That attendant, Brittany, she was waiting for an excuse. The system is designed to create problems, David said. Flag enough people as risks, treat them with suspicion, and eventually someone reacts. Then they can say, see, we were right to watch them. How long have you known about this? Naomi asked. Too long, David admitted, shame crossing his face. I helped maintain the database. Told myself it was just a job, that someone else would do it if I didn't. But when I saw what happened to your daughter, he met Marcus's eyes. I have a younger sister her age. Couldn't sleep thinking about her facing that someday. Marcus studied the young man, seeing the fear and determination warring in his expression. You're risking your career. Maybe, David agreed. But some things matter more than a paycheck. Naomi was already reviewing the files on David's drive. This is explosive, she breathed. Employee complaints, cover-ups, internal memos about demographic management. They've been systematically discriminating against visitors and employees for years, and retaliating against anyone who speaks up. Like they're trying to do to you now, Dr. Bennett, David added. Those leaked documents? That's standard procedure. They dig until they find something they can use. And if they can't find it, they create it, Marcus finished, thinking of the doctored financial records. His phone buzzed. Another reporter asking for comment about allegations of financial impropriety. The story was spreading fast, exactly as the museum planned. They think this will make me back down, Marcus said, his voice hardening. He looked at the visitor watch report again, at the cold classification of his daughter as a potential problem before she'd even spoken a word. Standing, he walked to the window. Chicago traffic flowed below, endless streams of people moving through their lives, unaware of the invisible systems marking some of them as less worthy, less welcome. Thought of Sage's face when Brittany grabbed her shoulder, the confusion and hurt in her eyes. It wasn't just one prejudiced attendant. It was policy. Programming. Deliberate. Marcus turned back to Naomi and David, his jaw tight with controlled fury. The paper crumpled in his fist as he spoke two words that would change everything. Now it's war. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the coffee shop windows as Marcus, Naomi, and David huddled over a laptop in the corner booth. David's fingers flew across the keyboard, entering complex passwords. These files are triple encrypted, he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been collecting evidence for months, but I never thought I'd find someone brave enough to use it. The screen filled with document after document. Internal memos, training materials, system logs. Naomi leaned forward, her reporter's instincts firing as she scanned the dates. This goes back to 2018, she breathed. Look at these demographic codes. C2 for Black visitors, L4 for Latino families, S3 for visitors in traditional religious dress. Marcus's jaw tightened as he read through a staff training manual. Risk indicators include non-standard English, cultural attire, and group behavior patterns inconsistent with typical patron demographics. They turned prejudice into policy, he said. The algorithm flags anyone who fits these profiles, David explained, pulling up more files. Then it automatically generates warning notices to staff. Look at the statistics. Black visitors are 12 times more likely to be reported for access compliance issues because they're being watched and challenged more often. Create the suspicion, then use the results to justify the suspicion, Naomi finished, taking rapid notes. It's a perfect cycle of discrimination. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, museum lawyers asking questions about our security protocols. Watch your back. We need to move, he said, showing them the message. Patricia Drummond's people will be looking for it. Too late, David interrupted, pointing through the window. Two men in dark suits were crossing the street, heading straight for the coffee shop. Their earpieces and rigid postures screamed corporate security. Back door, Naomi said sharply, already packing up her laptop. David, where's your car? Parking garage, third level behind us. His hands shook as he gathered his things. But they probably know my plates. Take mine, Marcus said, tossing him a key fob. Black sedan, second level, space 178. Naomi, go with him. I'll draw their attention. They split up. Marcus walked calmly toward the front door just as the security men entered. He made eye contact, then deliberately turned toward the restrooms. They followed, giving David and Naomi precious seconds to slip out the back. The parking garage was a maze of concrete and shadows. David clutched his laptop bag close as they hurried down the stairs. Behind them, a door banged open. There, a voice echoed through the structure. Stop right there, Kim. Naomi grabbed David's arm, pulling him behind a concrete pillar. How many files can they delete remotely? None, he panted. I air-gapped everything important. But if they get my laptop, they won't, she promised, peering around the pillar. 2 more security men were entering from the ground level. We need a distraction. Her phone lit up with a text from Marcus. My sedan's alarm is about to go off. Be ready to run. Seconds later, a piercing car alarm split the air. The security men hesitated, looking toward the sound. Naomi and David sprinted for the vehicle, diving inside just as shouts rang out behind them. Go. Naomi ordered, and David gunned the engine. They squealed up the exit ramp as more security vehicles appeared at the structure's entrance. What followed was a tense chase through downtown Chicago. David, despite his nervous demeanor, handled the sedan with surprising skill, weaving through traffic while Naomi monitored their pursuers. 3 cars, she reported. They're not trying to stop us, just following to wherever we're going. Then we don't go where we're going, David said grimly, making a sharp turn onto a side street. Call Dr. Bennett. Tell him to meet us at Union Station. The next 15 minutes were a blur of calculated turns and false trails. They drove through shopping centers, doubled back through parking lots, and finally lost their tail in the maze-like streets of Chinatown. Marcus was waiting at their actual destination, a nondescript apartment building where Naomi kept a secure workspace. They hurried inside, checking repeatedly to ensure they hadn't been followed. Nice driving, Marcus told David as they settled into Naomi's apartment. Where'd you learn those moves? Video games, David admitted with a small smile. Never thought they'd actually be useful. Naomi was already setting up her equipment, connecting to secure networks, preparing to upload the files. We need to get this out before they can spin it. Once the public sees these documents, her screen went black. Then red text appeared, account suspended for terms of service violation. They're shutting down my access, she said, fingers flying as she tried alternate accounts. All of them. Every platform, every backup. Marcus sank into a chair, finally letting out the breath he'd been holding since the coffee shop. We hit a nerve, he said. They wouldn't react this strongly if we weren't onto something big. We've got something bigger than discrimination, David added, pulling out his phone. While I was copying files, I found financial records. The museum's been using the visitor watch system to deny membership renewal trials, void patron benefits, and force visitors into lower access tiers. They're not just discriminating, they're profiting from it. Naomi stared at her blocked accounts, her expression hardening. They think they can silence us faster than we can speak, she said. But they don't know who they're dealing with. Naomi's fingers moved swiftly across her backup laptop, uploading the files through a secure network she'd built for whistleblowers. The documents went live at midnight, spreadsheets, internal memos, training guides, all revealing the museum's systematic discrimination. It's done, she said, closing the laptop. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. By dawn, social media was ablaze. The leaked documents paired perfectly with the viral video of Brittany harassing Sage. News channels picked up the story, showing the footage alongside infographics explaining the visitor watch system. Museum accused of systemic racial profiling, screamed one headline. Secret visitor rating system targets minorities, declared another. Marcus watched the coverage spread from his hotel room, his phone buzzing constantly with messages from reporters, business partners, and concerned friends. The hashtag Culture for All was trending nationwide, with thousands sharing their own stories of discrimination in museums and cultural institutions. Look at this, Naomi said, showing him her tablet. Former employees coming forward. Curators who quit rather than enforce these policies. Security staff who were told to watch certain visitors more carefully. The museum's stock price, yes, they'd recently gone partially public, began to drop. By mid-morning, they issued their first statement. Whitmore Museum takes these allegations seriously. Staff member Brittany Walsh has been suspended pending a full investigation. But within hours, Patricia Drummond appeared on major news networks, her face a mask of professional concern. While we understand Dr. Bennett's frustration, she said, leaning into the camera with rehearsed sincerity, we're deeply troubled by his attempts to weaponize a minor incident for business advantage. This is a clear case of a disgruntled consultant using identity politics to pressure our institution after failed contract negotiations. The timing of these leaked documents, which we believe to be altered, is highly suspicious. Marcus's phone rang. His largest investor was pulling out. Too much controversy, they said, his company's reputation began to suffer. Trade publications ran articles questioning his judgment. In Naomi's secure apartment, David paced nervously. They're going to come after all of us, he said. I've already gotten weird calls. Someone asking about my sister back in Seattle. They're trying to scare us into backing down, Naomi replied, but her voice wavered slightly. Her email was flooded with threatening messages. One included a photo of her leaving her apartment that morning. Marcus's security team reported suspicious vehicles following his car. Hotel staff mentioned people asking questions about his room number. He arranged for Sage to stay with his sister in a secure location across town. Late that afternoon, David called in a panic. "My apartment's been broken into. Everything's torn apart. My backup equipment is gone. Get out of there now," Marcus ordered. "Come to the hotel. We'll figure this out together." But as the day wore on, the pressure mounted. Patricia's message was gaining traction in certain media circles. "Why would a successful black consultant cry racism?" one pundit asked. "Isn't he proof the system works?" Marcus's business partners started distancing themselves. Contracts were delayed for review. Banks called about routine audits. The machinery of institutional retaliation was grinding into motion. In his hotel suite that evening, Marcus found Sage sitting cross-legged on the couch, watching the news. Her face was there, blurred but recognizable, as commentators debated the incident. "Why are they blurring me, Daddy?" she asked, her small voice cutting through his exhaustion. "Like I did something wrong?" "They're supposed to protect children on TV," he explained, sitting beside her. She was quiet for a moment, watching as Patricia appeared again, speaking about unfortunate misunderstandings and political agendas. "Are we the bad guys now?" Sage asked softly, her eyes troubled. "That lady keeps saying we're hurting people." Marcus pulled her close, his heart aching at how this was affecting her. "No, sweetheart. Never. You remember what I told you about storms?" She nodded against his chest. "Some people hide from them, but eagles fly above them." "That's right," he said, stroking her hair. "We're flying above this storm. And you know what? Storms make us stronger. They show us what we're made of." His phone buzzed. Another threat. Another warning. Another attempt to make him back down, but holding Sage, feeling her trust in him, Marcus found his resolve hardening. Naomi arrived later with takeout dinner, her usual confidence somewhat shaken. "They've started digging into my past," she said quietly after Sage had gone to bed. "Old articles, college papers, anything they can twist." "What about David?" Marcus asked. "Safe. I got him to a friend's place in Milwaukee. But he's terrified. They're painting him as a disgruntled employee who stole proprietary data." Marcus stared out at the Chicago skyline, lights twinkling like fallen stars. "They think if they threaten us enough, we'll go away. That we'll decide it's not worth the cost." "Is it?" Naomi asked, not challenging, just honest. Marcus thought of Sage watching the news, trying to understand why standing up for herself had caused such chaos. "We can't let them win," he said. "Not just for us. For everyone who's ever been told they don't belong in galleries, in boardrooms, in positions of power." Naomi nodded, pulling up her laptop. "Then let's give them something new to worry about. Those financial records David found. I've barely scratched the surface." Outside, thunder rolled across the city, a storm approaching. But inside, they worked through the night, knowing that sometimes the only way out is through. Marcus stood at the podium in a downtown conference room, adjusting his tie one last time. The space buzzed with reporters and cameras. Naomi had helped arrange this press conference, making sure every major outlet was present. This was their moment to lay out all the evidence, the discrimination policies, the cover-ups, the threats. Trevor Gaines, Marcus's business partner of 12 years, sat in the front row. He'd been oddly quiet these past few days, but Marcus had chalked it up to stress. Now Trevor wouldn't meet his eyes. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice steady. 5 days ago, my 10-year-old daughter was humiliated at a museum because someone decided she didn't look like she belonged in the patron gallery. What we discovered next reveals a pattern of discrimination that goes far beyond one incident." Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Marcus started presenting the evidence, slide by slide: the visitor watch system, the internal memos, the patterns of harassment, but something felt off. The reporters weren't taking notes anymore. Some were looking at their phones, whispering to each other. Marcus saw Naomi in the back of the room, frantically waving her tablet. A reporter stood up, interrupting him. "Dr. Bennett, how do you respond to allegations that you've been embezzling funds from your company's client trust accounts?" The room erupted. More reporters jumped in. "Is it true you falsified provenance documents? Did you use company funds for personal expenses? What about the offshore accounts?" Marcus's heart pounded. "These allegations are completely false. I don't know what you're talking about." But they were all looking at their phones, reading something. Breaking news alerts flashed across the screens mounted on the walls. Arts consultant Marcus Bennett accused of massive fraud. Trevor slipped out of his chair and headed for the door. That's when Marcus knew. The press conference is over, Naomi announced, rushing to the podium. She practically dragged Marcus off the stage as reporters shouted questions. In a side room, she showed him what had just hit the internet. Documents, spreadsheets, emails, all perfectly crafted to make it look like he'd been stealing from his own company for years. The documents focused specifically on funds meant for artist commissions and cultural preservation projects. A deliberate choice to destroy his reputation in the arts community. These are fake, Marcus said, scrolling through them. But they're built from real internal documents. Only someone with deep access could have Marcus. Naomi pointed to the document properties. The last person to edit them, Trevor Gaines. Security cameras showed Trevor leaving the building through a service entrance, getting into a car with museum executives. Within hours, the museum announced they were deeply troubled by these revelations and were cooperating fully with authorities investigating Bennett Arts Consulting. Marcus's phone exploded with messages. Clients canceling contracts, partners backing out of deals, his professional reputation in freefall. Even supporters of the discrimination case were distancing themselves. Trevor was like a brother to me, Marcus said, his voice hollow. He and Trevor had started with nothing, built everything together. 12 years of friendship, trust, partnership, gone. Naomi worked her contacts, trying to get ahead of the story. But the museum's PR machine was in full swing. They painted Marcus as a fraud who had attacked them to cover his own crimes. Brittany Walsh gave tearful interviews about how she'd just been doing her job, protecting patrons from a known fraudster's family. By evening, the damage was catastrophic. Banks froze accounts for investigation. The board called an emergency meeting. Former allies wouldn't take his calls. Marcus sat in his hotel room, watching his life's work crumble on live TV. Sage was safe with his sister, but he couldn't risk her being hounded by reporters. His phone buzzed. A message from Trevor. It's just business, Marcus. Nothing personal. You should have backed down when you had the chance. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse, full partnership in their new cultural division. Sorry. Fury rose in his throat. He'd given Trevor everything. Partnership, trust, friendship. They'd celebrated each other's children's birthdays, spent holidays together, helped each other through hard times. And Trevor had sold him out for a promotion. Marcus paced the room, mind racing. There had to be a way to prove the documents were fake. But Trevor knew everything about their systems, their security, their records. He would have covered his tracks perfectly. A soft knock at the door. Marcus opened it. Empty hallway, but there on the floor lay a single sheet of paper. You don't own this gallery anymore. He crumpled the note in his fist. Through the window, he could see news vans gathering outside the hotel. His phone kept buzzing. More cancellations, more accusations, more betrayals. The consulting firm he'd built from nothing was burning. The truth about the museum's discrimination was buried under an avalanche of lies. His daughter's humiliation had led them here, and now he couldn't even protect her from the fallout. Dr. Marcus Bennett, the man who had risen from Chicago's South Side to build a respected cultural consulting company, stood alone in his hotel room, watching decades of work turn to ash. But as he stared at the crumpled note in his hand, something hardened in his chest. They thought this would break him. They thought taking everything would make him quit. They thought wrong. He pulled out his phone and called Naomi. Find David, he said. He's not the only one in their IT department who's seen things. There's always a backup, always a trail. And we're going to find it. The night pressed against the windows, the city lights blurring through his tears of rage. His company might be burning, but from these ashes, justice would rise. Just made this personal. The next morning, Marcus sat in his sister's living room, staring at his phone. Another rejection email from clients. Another news alert about his alleged fraud. Another former friend refusing to take his call. The walls were closing in. Sage watched cartoons on the couch, but he could tell she wasn't really seeing them. She kept glancing his way, those wise eyes taking in more than a 10-year-old should have to understand. Baby, come here, Marcus said softly. She came and climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done in years. She was getting so tall, so grown up. He'd worked so hard to give her everything, to show her that dreams had no ceiling, that determination could overcome any obstacle. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry I brought all this chaos into your life. Why are you sorry? Sage asked, touching his cheek. You didn't do anything wrong. I wanted to protect you, to make things right. But now his voice failed him. The tears he'd been holding back for days finally broke free. Now everything's falling apart. The company I built, all our dreams, they're taking it all away. Sage wrapped her small arms around his neck. Remember when I was scared to present my art project in front of the whole school? Marcus nodded, wiping his eyes. You told me being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're scared. I did say that, didn't I? And you told me something else too. Sage sat up straight, her eyes bright and determined. You told me the truth always rises. Like a balloon, you can try to hold it down, but eventually it floats up where everyone can see it. Marcus stared at his daughter, those words hitting him like a physical force. He had told her that, the day she'd asked why some kids at school spread lies about others. He'd explained that lies might seem easier, might seem to win for a while, but truth had buoyancy, it couldn't stay buried forever. When did you get so wise? He asked, managing a smile. I learned from you, Daddy. She touched his wet cheek again. Don't let them make you cry. We're not wrong. They are. A knock at the door made them both jump. Marcus's sister answered it. It was Naomi, looking both exhausted and energized. Marcus, she said, bursting in. We've got something. She pulled up a chair, speaking quietly so Sage wouldn't hear every detail. David came through. Before he left the IT department, he made one backup of the surveillance footage from that museum visit. The whole thing, including what happened after you and Sage left. Marcus sat up straighter. What do you mean? The cameras kept rolling. They caught Brittany going straight to the staff office, calling Patricia Drummond. They caught the whole conversation about how to handle you. And here's the best part, Patricia explicitly ordered them to delete all footage and correspondence about the incident. Can we prove it's real? They'll claim it's doctored. Naomi pulled out a flash drive. That's the beauty of it. David didn't just copy the video. He copied the entire metadata trail, timestamps, camera IDs, system logs. It's impossible to fake that level of detail. Plus, he included other incidents he'd archived. 8 more cases of discrimination, all with the same pattern. Marcus stared at the tiny drive in his palm, everything they needed. Proof not just of one incident, but of a systematic pattern of discrimination and cover-ups. If this is real, he said slowly, we end it publicly. Naomi nodded. Live. No edits. No chance for them to spin it or bury it. They'll try to stop us. They might even try to arrest me on those fraud charges. That's why we do it where they least expect it. Naomi leaned forward. The museum's annual gala is tomorrow night. Patricia Drummond is giving the keynote address on diversity and inclusion in cultural spaces. Every major donor will be there, every board member, every media outlet that covers the arts. Marcus looked at Sage, still watching them curiously from across the room. Everything he'd built, everything he'd dreamed of, it had all been for her. To show her that integrity mattered, that justice was worth fighting for. That truth, in the end, would always rise. We'll need help, he said. Technical support to bypass their security, a way to broadcast live that they can't shut down. Already lined up, Naomi assured him. David's got contacts in their AV department who are sick of covering up dirty secrets. They'll make sure we get access to their presentation system. Marcus stood up, energy flooding back into his tired body. Send me every detail. I need to prepare. He hesitated, looking at his daughter. I need to make arrangements for Sage. This could get ugly. Let me come with you, Sage said suddenly. They turned, surprised she'd been listening. Please, Daddy. I'm not scared. Marcus knelt beside her. Baby, tomorrow night might be dangerous. These people, you said truth always rises, she interrupted, her chin set stubbornly. I want to see it rise. Marcus looked at Naomi, who shrugged. She's got a point. Besides, seeing her there might remind people what this is really about. The flash drive felt warm in Marcus's palm, heavy with the weight of truth and consequences. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another, but looking at his daughter's determined face, he knew they'd already won the most important battle. They'd chosen truth over fear, justice over silence. As evening settled over Chicago, Marcus sat in Naomi's car outside Whitmore Museum's maintenance facility. Captain No, head of security Thomas Rivera's shift was ending, and this might be their only chance to talk privately. Are you sure about this? Naomi asked, checking her mirrors for any surveillance. Rivera saw everything. He has authority. Other witnesses don't. Marcus watched the employee exit. And right now, we need every voice we can get. Rivera emerged from the building, his security uniform crisp despite the late hour. When he spotted Marcus waiting by the fence, he hesitated, then walked over slowly. Dr. Bennett, Rivera said, his voice careful. I heard about what happened, the accusations. You know they're lies, Thomas, Marcus said quietly. You were there. You saw how it started. Rivera glanced around the parking lot. Look, I want to help, but I've got 18 years invested in this place. My pension, my family's security, they're framing an innocent man, Naomi cut in, stepping forward. David Kim, the IT tech who preserved the evidence. They broke into his apartment, planted false allegations. He might face criminal charges. That made Rivera stop. David? The young guy who always helps with the camera systems? Marcus nodded. They're destroying him because he refused to delete proof of their discrimination. Just like they're trying to destroy me. How long before they come for someone else? Rivera leaned against the fence, conflict clear on his face. I've spent my whole career trying to stay above the politics. Security doesn't see color, that's what I always said. But the people who control security do, Marcus replied. You know that better than most. What exactly are you asking me to do? Testify. Tomorrow at the gala. Tell them what you witnessed that day. How Brittany treated my daughter before she knew who I was. How the supervisors pressured you to modify your incident report. Rivera's head snapped up. How did you know about that? Because they do it every time, Naomi said. We have proof of 8 similar cases. All buried, all covered up. Silence stretched between them. In the distance, a siren wailed through the city streets. My father was a security guard in a factory in Mexico, Rivera said finally. He used to tell me, in every building, there are doors for some people and walls for others. Your job is to know the difference and to question who decided which is which. He straightened his shoulders. But staying silent when we see wrong, that makes us the wall, doesn't it? It does, Marcus agreed softly. I'll testify, Rivera's voice grew firmer. Not just about your visit. About all of it. The special watch lists, the way they flag certain names, certain faces. Everything I've seen but pretended not to notice. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you, Thomas. As they shook hands, Marcus's phone buzzed. An email from Helen Park, the elderly patron who'd tried to intervene during Sage's incident. Dear Dr. Bennett, I've been following your struggle with horror and dismay. I may be 73, but I know right from wrong. Attached is my video of that day. I've also written a statement about what I witnessed. Use it however you need. Some fights are worth losing everything for, because staying silent costs even more. With you in spirit, Helen Park. The video attachment showed Brittany's behavior from yet another angle, capturing details they hadn't seen before: the casual cruelty in her smile, the way other staff members turned away, unwilling to intervene. Perfect timing, Naomi said. Helen Park gives us exactly what we need, a respected witness with nothing to gain. They can't dismiss her as having an agenda. They drove to Naomi's studio across town. The small office space had been transformed into a command center, with computers, cameras, and backup power supplies filling every surface. David was already there, his fingers flying over keyboards as he tested their broadcast setup. Security protocols are ready, he reported. Once we go live, they won't be able to shut us down without cutting their whole network. Marcus uploaded Helen's video, adding it to their evidence folder. Rivera recorded his statement, his voice growing stronger with each revelation. The truth was assembling itself, piece by damning piece. Sage sat in the corner doing homework, but clearly listening to everything. She looked up as Marcus passed. Are you scared, Daddy? He knelt beside her. A little. But you taught me something about being brave, remember? She smiled. Doing the right thing even when you're scared. Exactly. He kissed her forehead. And tomorrow we're going to show them what truth looks like when it finally rises. Through the studio windows, they could see news vans starting to gather. Word had leaked that something big was coming. Reporters paced the sidewalk, phones pressed to their ears, hungry for the story that was about to break. Naomi checked their streaming setup one last time. All systems ready. Backup channels confirmed. Social media teams on standby. Marcus watched the final evidence uploads complete. Documents, videos, testimonies, the full weight of truth assembled in digital form, ready to shatter the walls of silence Whitmore Museum had built. Rivera stood at the window, still in his uniform, watching more media arrive. In all my years in security, he said quietly, I've never been part of something quite like this. Good thing we've got an experienced professional on our side then, Marcus replied. The studio lights blazed as Marcus sat before the camera, his posture straight but relaxed. Years of client presentations had taught him the power of calm authority. Naomi counted down silently with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, Marcus began, his voice steady. My name is Dr. Marcus Bennett. 1 week ago, my 10-year-old daughter was assaulted at the Whitmore Museum because of the color of her skin. What followed was a systematic attempt to silence us, bury the truth, and destroy my company. Tonight, that silence ends. Behind him, screens displayed documentation, each piece appearing as he spoke. First, let me show you what really happened that day. The initial video played patron footage showing Brittany Walsh grabbing Sage's shoulder, pulling her from her seat. The sound of his daughter's frightened voice filled the studio. "Please stop. You're hurting me." Ms. Walsh claimed she was following protocol, Marcus continued. "But watch what happens when I appear." The footage showed Brittany's transformation from aggressive authority to stammering apologies. Now, most institutions would have addressed this immediately. Instead, Whitmore Museum chose retaliation. He displayed the internal emails, Patricia Drummond's threats, the falsified complaints. "They didn't just target me. They targeted everyone who dared to speak up." David's evidence appeared next, the infamous Visitor Watch database. Names, faces, racial profiles, all categorized as potential compliance risks. This system, Marcus explained, has been used to discriminate against thousands of visitors. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Thomas Rivera, head of security. The screen shifted to Rivera's testimony. His uniform gleamed under the lights as he detailed years of witnessed discrimination, altered reports, and systematic racism. "I stayed silent too long," Rivera admitted. "We all did." Social media counters in the corner showed viewing numbers exploding. Hashtags trending. The truth was taking flight. Then came Helen Park's footage, a new angle showing Brittany's sneering face, the deliberate humiliation in her actions. The elderly patron's statement followed. "I lived through the civil rights movement. I recognize its battles in modern clothing. What happened to that little girl was injustice wrapped in policy." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "But the most damning evidence was supposed to be destroyed. Thanks to one brave IT professional, it wasn't." The final video began playing the museum's security footage with crystal clear audio. Brittany's voice, sharp and clear, "That little black girl doesn't belong in the patron gallery. I don't care who her daddy thinks he is." Patricia Drummond's voice, cold and calculating, "Handle this quietly. We cannot lose another consulting contract to that man. Delete this footage immediately. And Thomas, I want that incident report rewritten by end of day." The studio fell silent. On their monitoring screens, social media exploded. News alerts popped up everywhere. Phone lines blazed with incoming calls. "This isn't just about one museum," Marcus continued. "This is about a system that profits from prejudice, that punishes those who speak up, that teaches children they don't belong in certain spaces because of their skin color." Live feeds showed crowds gathering outside Whitmore Museum's building. Reporters swarmed the entrance. Inside their studio, phones rang constantly. A technician passed Naomi a note. She held it up for Marcus. "Brittany Walsh is live on Channel 7 trying to respond." They patched in the feed. Brittany sat in a news studio, mascara running as she tried to defend herself. "I was just doing my job. They're twisting everything." Her voice cracked. "I'm not racist. I have black friends." The feed cut off as Brittany broke down completely, her chair scraping as she fled the set. Another alert. Patricia Drummond's office was empty. Her assistant reported she'd left suddenly, seen carrying boxes to her car. Marcus turned back to the camera, his voice growing softer but more powerful. "To every parent who's had to teach their child about prejudice too early. To every person who's been told they don't belong. To every worker who stayed silent out of fear, this moment is for you." The viewer count passed 2 million. Then 3. Messages flooded in from around the world. "My daughter Sage taught me something profound," Marcus continued. "She said truth always rises like a balloon you try to hold down. Today, we prove her right." He paused, letting the silence hold weight. No child should ever have to prove they belong in the spaces where culture lives. Naomi stepped forward and embraced him as the red recording light blinked off. Their team erupted in cheers. Phones kept ringing. Networks, newspapers, civil rights organizations, all demanding interviews. Through the windows, they could see more news vans arriving. Satellite trucks lined the street. The story wasn't just flying, it was soaring. In the corner, Sage looked up from her homework, a small smile on her face. She'd watched the whole broadcast quietly, understanding more than anyone realized. Now she walked over and took her father's hand. The truth had risen, and nothing could push it back down. The Congressional hearing room hummed with tension 3 weeks later. Cameras clicked as Senator Rodriguez addressed the packed chamber. "Today, we examine systemic discrimination in cultural institutions, specifically the disturbing practices at Whitmore Museum." Brittany Walsh sat alone at the witness table, her designer suit unable to mask her nervousness. Her testimony crumbled under questioning. "So you're saying the video was manipulated?" Senator Jackson asked. I never meant." Brittany's voice quavered. "It was institutional policy to monitor certain situations." "You mean racial profiling?" Senator Rodriguez pressed. Brittany's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, "But the damage was done. By day's end, Whitmore Museum announced her termination. News cameras caught her fleeing the building, shielding her face with a folder as reporters shouted questions. The next day, Patricia Drummond faced the committee. Her usual corporate polish had cracked. Dark circles showed through heavy makeup as she read from prepared statements. Ms. Drummond, Senator Rodriguez interrupted. Please explain this email where you ordered the deletion of security footage. Patricia's hands trembled. I was protecting proprietary. You were covering up racial discrimination, the senator corrected. Did these orders come from above? Patricia glanced at her lawyer, then cracked. The board chair approved all visitor watch protocols. It was considered essential to our revenue optimization. The revelation sent shockwaves through the cultural sector. Within hours, Whitmore's donor base began collapsing. The board chair resigned that evening, his statement citing health reasons. David Kim testified next, surrounded by federal protection officers. His quiet dignity commanded attention as he detailed years of systematic discrimination. I couldn't stay silent anymore, he explained. Not after seeing what they did to that little girl. The committee arranged ongoing protection for David. Major tech companies immediately offered him prestigious positions. Impressed by his moral courage, Marcus watched it all from his rebuilt office, where supporters now camped outside daily. His phone buzzed constantly with messages of solidarity. Civil rights organizations requested speaking engagements. Museums across the country reached out with partnership offers. The vindication felt hollow until Sage hugged him that evening. You did it, Daddy, she whispered. You made them see the truth. Whitmore's board called an emergency meeting. Their statement admitted institutional failures and offered Marcus a formal apology plus substantial compensation, declined via public letter. Apologies without change are just words. True justice requires action, not symbolism. My daughter deserves more than your regret. She deserves a world where no child faces what she faced. The letter went viral. #Sage deserves more trended worldwide. A week later, Marcus stood at a press podium outside his company headquarters. Cameras flashed as he adjusted the microphone. Sage stood beside him, wearing a bright purple dress, her head held high. Today marks a new chapter, Marcus began. Not just for museums, but for every institution where discrimination hides behind policy. Change doesn't come from apologies. It comes from action. He announced a new initiative, the Sage Bennett Foundation for Cultural Equity. We'll monitor, report, and challenge discrimination in all cultural spaces. No more deleted videos. No more buried complaints. No more children learning they're less than because of their skin color. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone started chanting, Sage. 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 The chant spread like waves. Reporters joined in. Even security guards nodded along. Sage squeezed her father's hand, smiling shyly at the crowd. Marcus watched his daughter's face light up, remembering her tears on that first museum visit. Now she stood tall, her presence commanding respect without asking for it. Culture belongs to everyone, Marcus continued over the chants. Patron galleries, public spaces, boardrooms, or classrooms, merit and dignity know no color. We'll make sure of that. More voices joined the chanting. Signs appeared in the crowd, equal access for all. Sage's Army. Justice in every gallery. Former Whitmore employees stepped forward, sharing their own stories. Each testimony strengthened the movement. Each voice added power to the change. We're not fighting for revenge, Marcus declared. We're fighting for a future where where all our children can explore without artificial limits, where they're judged by their character, not their color. The chanting grew louder. Sage. Sage. Sage waved to the crowd, her smile bright enough to light up the afternoon sky. She tugged her father's sleeve and whispered something. Marcus nodded and lifted her up to the microphone. The crowd hushed, eager to hear her speak. This 10-year-old girl who'd sparked a movement, who'd faced discrimination with dignity beyond her years, who'd taught institutional giants about humanity. The chanting continued softly, a rhythm of hope and change. Sage. Sage, she stood there, hands clasped in her father's, facing a future where truth had indeed risen higher than lies, where justice had grown wings, where her name had become a symbol of something larger than one museum visit, one incident, one moment of prejudice. The crowd kept chanting, their voices rising like balloons taking flight. Sage. Sage. Sage, the gleaming community center buzzed with anticipation. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the fresh paint of a newly restored historical gallery space. Workers in purple t-shirts, the foundation's color moved with purpose, preparing for the unveiling ceremony. Marcus stood back, taking in the scene. The gallery's walls shone like possibility itself, waiting for their first exhibition. Beside him, Sage bounced on her toes, paintbrush clutched in her small hand. Ready, sweetheart? Marcus asked, his voice soft with pride. Naomi Chen approached, tablet in hand. As communications director for the Sage Bennett Foundation, she'd transformed from investigative journalist to storyteller of hope. The media's assembled outside, she reported. And you'll love this, 500 scholarship applications came in just this morning. She smiled at Sage. Looks like you've inspired quite a few dreams. David Kim emerged from his new command center, where state-of-the-art systems now monitored cultural institutions across the country for discriminatory practices. His quiet demeanor had given way to confident leadership. All systems are green, he announced. And the live stream is ready whenever you are. The center doors began to roll open, revealing a crowd of reporters, museum representatives, and most importantly, families. Dozens of children from underrepresented communities, all dreaming of careers in arts and culture, waited with their parents. Marcus adjusted his tie, remembering the long journey here. After the congressional hearings, he'd invested his energy and the foundation's support into something bigger than revenge. The Sage Bennett Foundation wasn't just a watchdog, it was a promise.